This is for the ones who feel that quiet pull, the knowing that life is about more than just success, titles, or chasing the next big thing.
Because it's not just about what you build, it's about how you show up and the story you write with your life.
We're Ashton and Jordan, sisters, 7th generation entrepreneurs, and your hosts.
We're here to call you higher into your potential, your purpose, and the kind of life that feels rich in all the ways that matter. Welcome to Legacy Creator.
Everyone knows that we're sisters, and I think a natural thing that comes along with that is just this like undeniable synchronicity. And I feel like you can even notice that and feel that in our podcast. When we started recording together, it was like after the first episode, I was like, there's something different about that. Like there's some sort of connection and synchronicity that happens. And I feel like that aligned with our stories, our experiences, and our journeys last year that really shaped this season. And in our last episode, we talked about my big transformation of becoming a mom and just how that like shook up my entire life. It changed everything about the way I approach business and my everyday. And it's so funny because like 3 months after giving birth, you had this huge transformation. And this had to do so much more with just like inner work, like behind the scenes. And I feel like that's the stuff that we don't often talk about a lot or enough in the business world. Like we're so focused on strategy, we're so focused on these like external pieces, but in reality, like who you are within and like the strength that you're forging, like the resilience that you're creating and growing into, and just the ultimate like health of your being. That is the foundation for like your work, your creativity, your business. And so we both had these experiences, but today Jordan's in the hot seat.
Oh, Lord.
And I'm so excited to unpack this. And I feel like if you're tuning in today, you should in a way feel a little bit honored because like Jordan's going to invite you into this piece of her story that you haven't really shared publicly before. I feel like, you shared it with your family and like gone through it and navigated it with your family and the people closest to you, but it's going to be a really powerful conversation. So I want to start by rewinding to 2024, like before this actual moment transition period in your life where everything changed. Talk to me about the first like half of the year and like how was Jordan feeling? Like what was going on in her life?
Oh man, I feel like such a different person, but like still the same. It's so weird. Looking back on last year, especially like summertime, I'm just like reflecting on summer as like it was such a good time. Like on the surface, I feel like it was like when I look back at 2024, I think about summertime specifically and how like that sort of in a way like encompassed the year for me, where like it felt like I was, thriving. I was like outside all the time. I was going to the pool and like working on stuff, like creating content, like having a good time. But like looking back beneath the surface, like there was so much like anxiety and inner turmoil that like I wasn't addressing at the time and that I was like ignoring. And I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to reflect back. I definitely like experienced like anxiety attacks and things like that. I'm sure that was somewhat happening like last year and maybe 2023. And I just was like a ball of anxiety so much of the time. I was so stressed about work, like much of the time for like no reason. I was just carrying a lot of stress and anxiety, and all the while like kind of thriving on the surface, but not really. And then it's like that weird thing of like, you were just talking about how on social media, like we don't always talk about certain things. And so it seems great. And that's kind of how that felt for me. I was like, it seems good on the surface and I'm showing up online, like, everything's fine, like going about like my life, like everything's normal. However, like behind the scenes, I was like, this, like, I'm kind of struggling, but like, I didn't want to admit it at the time, or like, I didn't want to admit it to myself. I think that's what it was. Like for the longest time, I was like, everything's great, but like, not really, like not like under the surface, it was like not okay. And, I felt stress, anxiety. I felt like generally like not content with where I was at. Like, I would complain a lot. Like that was something that was going on a lot last year. I would complain so much to like, you know, in private settings, like with my boyfriend or whatever, I would complain about like work or like, oh, I just have so much content to get through all the time. And like, when is it ever going to end? And just like going crazy about like stuff like that. Whereas now I'm like, I feel fine about it for the most part. But yeah, I felt like this discontentment, like dissatisfaction and feeling like something's like off or like something is missing or just like generally unhappy. Although I was like, happy in a weird sense. It was like, you know, I have this great relationship with like my family. I have this boyfriend who I love. And like last year I reconnected with like a couple old friends of mine. That was like a really cool experience that I hadn't talked to in years. And it was like all these great things happening, but on the inside I was just like, like not feeling okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think we've all been in those seasons where it's like our environment and everything on the outside like looks like all the boxes are being checked off when we're like, you know, this should be great. Right? But like, why am I feeling like something off in my spirit? Why am I feeling like this misalignment is happening? And I can definitely attest to just like the anxiety. I mean, we would get on meetings and it just like you were a ball of anxiety and just stress. And I was like, girlfriend, like, what can we do to like logistically help you out? Like, let's take this off your plate. Let's like introduce this structure. Let's like, you know, I think we even talked about just things to like regulate your hormones and stuff like that, because that's a very real thing. Yeah. But it was like all of these things we were addressing and trying to like problem solve for were like very on the surface. And in actuality, I think what you realize later on is like, this misalignment was happening like deep within you, within your spirit. And so that's what that year looked like up until the month of October. And I remember like you gave me a phone call and you were just like so out of sorts and upset. And you essentially had started to go through this experience where like all of these things compounded. And so talk us through like you hit this wall. Like what did that look like?
Was this the phone call where I was like crying and like having my breakdown? I was like literally having a breakdown. Like, oh, what was your question? I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about the phone call.
No, you're good. I'm just talking about when you hit this wall and you were having this breakdown, like what was coming up for you? Like what was this moment?
Yeah, I think I just had that realization that like, you know, I finally accepted that like maybe something is off, or like maybe the way I've been doing things is like not working anymore, and the stuff that I've been doing isn't serving me. And I just like I finally hit the wall where I was like, I can't keep living life this way. I can't keep doing this. Like something has to change or else I'm going to go crazy and live like this forever. And I felt like in that time when I kind of hit this wall, I felt like I was going insane. Like I'm not like now looking back, I can, you know, I feel like so disconnected from that moment now, but in the moment, I felt like I was going crazy because I felt so much conflict. I think it was like I'd been doing things for so long out of just what I wanted to do, the way I wanted to approach things, instead of really listening to what I needed. And like, you know, I felt like for so long there was like this voice in the back of my head that was like, hey, like maybe let's not do this, or hey, like you need to rethink this. And I just was like ignoring that voice. And that I think is where so much of the conflict was coming from, was just within me. Like I was having this inner battle of like, you know, I kind of was at like a crossroads in my life. And I was like, I can either pick this path or this path. Like I was at a fork in the road and I was like, I need to choose like the right path and take the next best step that I can. And yeah, it was like disorienting. Like I felt like I don't know. That's just the way I think to describe it to people, is like, I felt like I was actually going insane. And like the conflict within me, there was so much friction. And because I had been doing things like that I wanted to do and neglecting what I needed to do in my life. And it was just really like, I was finally feeling at odds with that. And I finally realized like something's got to change, or like I need to make better decisions. I need to like do things differently. And yeah, it was like a really, really hard moment because I was like, yeah. Yeah,
it's like battling the want versus the need, and also like the picture of life that you think you may want or you should want versus like coming back to like your compass, like your guiding light, your spiritual like relationship with the Lord, your core values and beliefs, and like just this solid foundation that I feel like you kind of just put to the side in this season because, you know, you were just doing all the things that you wanted to do and going down this path.
It was like, I felt like, and I'm in my 20s, but I felt like I'd been living life like a rebellious teenager for a while in a way of just like, I just want to do things how I want to do it, you know? And like, you know, I did kind of sit certain things to the back burner, like my core beliefs of like what I like the foundation of what I believe in was kind of like, I just kind of neglected it or just like ignored it and wasn't really like, I was like, I'm just going to do what I want. I'm going to be my teenage self for as long as I can be. And I don't know. I feel like that, you know, we all go through that season of life, literally, of being a teenager or at least being in that mindset of a teenager. But it was like, it was time to like grow up or like, it was time to like move on, like leave that chapter in the past and like really get back to like who I am at the core, what I do believe in. And like, it was almost like I have my like core belief system but like my actions and things that I was doing was kind of like opposing that. And I think that's where a lot of friction came from because I was like, I'm not living life by this belief system. And thus I'm feeling this like crazy inner turmoil because like, I don't know, it just felt like so much inner conflict because of that. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think like I can relate to this in part, just kind of like getting lost with, you know, what you think that you want or you think that you should be doing or what seems like shiny and fun for a season, even like just simple distractions in business and a lot of the things that I feel like I kind of went down rabbit holes before, like becoming a mom, just distractions from like my own path and what I really believe, desire, and want, because things kind of on the surface look shiny and you can kind of be happy with those things for a season, but ultimately, eventually you're going to hit this roadblock where you're going to realize like, okay, I've ventured off the path. And like, even though some of these things may have been fun for a time, like if I don't change this, I'm not going to ever feel that like alignment and peace within myself. And so I feel like so much of this was just you coming back to you and your relationship with the Lord, your foundation that's always been within you, and ultimately battling like, am I going to like stay on this path or am I going to make this change and like surrender to this change?
Yeah.
And that's where you were when you called me and you kept going back and forth. I don't know like what to do. Like I'm making big life decisions right now and I don't know why. Like on the surface, they look great, they feel great, but then deep down, I feel so much turmoil. And you're like, I know what I need to do, but I don't want to do it. And it's so scary. And I'm like, well, maybe it's not about like what you want. Maybe it's about what you need. Yeah.
And I feel like out of that phone call, the biggest takeaway was like, I just kept saying that, like, I know what I need to do, but I like don't want to, or like, I feel like I can't bring myself to get there and to do that. And like, you just kept saying kind of very gently, like, you know, maybe you should listen to that voice. And, you know, I know that it's hard, but like, you might need to do this. And yeah, it was just like, it was so hard and I felt such like confusion. Like I said earlier, it was like disoriented. I was disoriented and like didn't know what to do because like, yeah, it was just that inner battle. And
I imagine it like if you're in a cave and you have like a dozen or more people like saying something and giving their input, it's gonna echo, it's going to be so disorienting. But if you are so firmly planted and grounded with that one inner voice, then that disorientation stops and everything aligns and is grounded again. And I think that was like the storm and all of the swirling that happened right before the calm, and you like made your, you know, ultimate decisions. So like what did that look like after that moment? Yeah.
Man, that's such a good way to put it. I felt like, okay, so I was kind of at this crossroads in my personal life, and I did just make the decision to like listen to the inner voice, because I'm like, you know, the biggest regret I would have out of this moment is to like not listen to that. And for me, it's like that inner voice being like my intuition, but also like God, and God speaking to me and being like, yeah, it's time to like move on, move forward, and like you need to like get it together, girl, kind of thing. And like this sort of tough love I felt, you know, and the way I envision it is like literally God grabbing my shoulders and shaking me. And that in that moment, it felt kind of like that. It felt like this sort of like rude awakening, this violent, like not violent, but kind of violent, like wake up of like, oh, I'm like jolting awake. And it felt like God being like, you need to listen to yourself, but you need to listen to me, and you need to like make the next best decision and just put one foot in front of the other. And finally I sort of like yielded to that and like surrendered to it and just was like, okay, I'll just do what I feel like I need to do in my spirit, even though it feels like horrible. Like it, because like I said, I was just feeling so much inner conflict and everything. And it was so hard to like make that decision. And once I did though, although it was like a difficult moment, I did feel this like newfound like peace. And it wasn't maybe instant, but I did feel like when I made the decision, I was like, I feel like that's right in my gut, that like I need to listen to that inner voice saying like, you gotta like make a different decision here. You gotta like change. It felt right. And then like over the next few days, although it was like difficult, I felt like an insane amount of peace like I had never really felt before. And it was almost like, I don't know, it was like divine intervention. And I felt more joy too, which was weird because like it was sort of a painful experience. It felt like a rebirth in a way, or like I was rediscovering myself. I was finally looking in the mirror and like acknowledging like what maybe I'd been doing that wasn't serving me anymore. I made the changes I needed to make in like an instant. It was like over one weekend of just like this inner battle I was going through back and forth. Finally like made the decision on like, it was like Sunday, and I was like, I'm going to listen to this voice. And Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, I was just like, over like the next few days, I just felt like the world was like opening up in front of me again. I felt so much like lighter. I felt like I had made the right decision, and I felt so much like closer to God too than I had in forever. And it just felt so good for me to like make that decision and say yes and follow that voice. And yeah, I just honestly, it was like a lot of peace and a lot of joy, which was like weird, but like it felt so good. And I was like, yeah, it was also like reaffirming, because I was like, okay, I made the right decision. I feel like if I have all this peace and joy, then I did make the right decision. And yeah.
I feel like a good way to describe it is, before all of this, I feel like you were almost just like sleepwalking and kind of just going through the motions of life. You were kind of like a half version of yourself, like not the truest version of yourself. And beyond like this roadblock and in this transition, I felt like you just like came so much more alive. Like you were like radiating like peace and confidence, and like that anxiety, like you still have your anxious moments, but it's not as like overwhelming and crippling because you've realigned with like your spirit and your, you know, soul, your relationship with the Lord, and what you ultimately believe that you and know deep down that you need to be doing with your life, with your time, with your days. And it's just, yeah, it was so cool to see you go through the phases of that. Like the initial breaking point being so intense, making that decision over the span of a few days, and just like all of the questioning that comes with that. Like anytime you're going to follow your gut and your intuition and your spirit, you can know that you need to do it, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy, especially when you're like letting go of a past version of yourself, when you're shedding something. I mean, there can be pain and like turmoil that comes with that, but there's so much like redemption and liberation on the other side. And I feel like you're just like the freest version of you now. And when we were reflecting on this as well, we were just unpacking the truth that like we can take care of ourselves like on the surface. We can take care of like our mind. We can read, you know, incredible books. We can take care of our body and nourish ourselves and move, but it's mind, body, and spirit. And I feel like you had done a lot of work on like the mind and the body. That's like a whole other conversation for another time, but you for a couple of years had really been working on just like pouring into yourself, pouring into your health and well-being. But I think that spiritual component was the last one, and it was just creating all of that misalignment for you.
Definitely. I feel like, yeah, that was just like the missing piece. Cause like, I mean, for the most part, my like, you know, mind and body were pretty good. Although like, I feel like you can always work on that. And I do feel like when I had this sort of a reawakening and like God moment, I do feel like I then was starting to, you know, reprioritize that spiritual part of me. But I feel like they're all kind of tied together too. And when I started sort of nourishing that part of myself again, like, I don't know, something happened to like my mindset, like in an instant. It was like, I was just so much more like, I was just focusing on the right things again, I guess. I don't know. Like I felt more joy. And I don't know, like another thing that comes to mind is like last year and maybe even years before that, I had complained a lot. I was just like such a complainer. Like I never really thought of myself that way, but when I look back, I'm like, I complained so much. And like, that was like sometimes the like, topic of discussion with like, you know, a friend of mine. I would just complain about like everything. And now I've had this sort of like 180 where it's like, I don't need to do that. Like I because of this experience, now other things have kind of revealed themselves to me of like, I'd had poor habits with that, where I was just like complaining about everything. And I'm like, you know, that is a choice that we make. Like you can complain and complain. There's so much to complain about, you know, it's so easy to complain, but I'm like on the opposite side of that coin is like gratitude. And I've been working on that as well. And I feel like that has come so much more naturally too, since I had this experience of like coming back to myself and, you know, really getting to know God again and like reconnecting with that part of me. And yeah, I just am like so much more grateful. I'm like grateful for every single day that I have. And like, I'm grateful for everything in my life now. I feel like gratitude is just like number one thing on my mind lately. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, the mind, body, and spirit though, I feel like they're all kind of connected and you need all three. And like you said, you know, you can work out all you want, which is great. And you can read all the books and fill your brain with all sorts of knowledge. But if you are missing that spiritual component, I feel like it's so much easier to feel like discontent and dissatisfied and unhappy and unfulfilled and, you know, all the bad things, just like all the bad things. I feel like it's so much easier to feel that way because you don't have that like thing like anchoring you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I was curious too, what are some of the things that you feel like led you to this place where you felt this misalignment, or you were complaining a lot, or, you know, you essentially had just kind of abandoned your core beliefs and values? Like, was it social media? Like, what types of influence, people, what led to some of that?
Oh my God, I feel like so like all of the above, I guess. Like personal relationships in my life that were like not the most healthy, people's voices being in my head that like, you know, were kind of distracting me. Like that image you have of like the cave and all the voices bouncing off. I feel like, you know, just personal relationships in my life that were like having too much of a say, or I was just like relying on their input too much and, not really listening to myself. I feel like, you know, social media can just be the biggest distraction and like, just like so noisy. I feel like, you know, when I look back on 2024 and maybe even before then, I feel like a really good way to like quantify it or describe it would be, it was like one of the noisiest seasons of my life because I had, you know, noise from social media. I had noise from people who had too much of a say in my mind that I didn't even realize, you know, were influencing me in that way. I literally could not stand silence. It was so like that part of my life, I was like noise all the time, constant distraction, literally distracting myself as much as I possibly could from like the inner voice that was just like lingering there, like, hey, like you're ignoring this, or you're ignoring this voice that's like calling you back to yourself. You're ignoring your core beliefs that you've always believed in. And why is that? And I would literally like, I always had something, some form of media going. Like I always had YouTube on, or a TV show, or when I would go on walks, I had music in my earbuds. Every time I was in the car, I had music going, and you know, I was always talking to like a friend or whatever it may be. Like it was just constant distractions and constant like noise. And I literally would not, I don't even know if there was much time that I gave myself to really sit in silence. Like, and it's funny too, because I feel like I was really like trying to preach that, you know, to like people in our audience, be like, you need to like sit in silence and really get to know like yourself. And it's like, yes, I agree with that, but I wasn't living it out. And it was just so loud all the time. And all of that said, I feel like it was just all a form of distraction to just keep me from like really, I don't know, thinking for myself and getting back to like truth. And yeah, it was just a whole lot of noise and a whole lot of distraction. And that is one big takeaway, that like genuinely, if you find yourself like living life like that, I cannot like recommend that more. Like I can't recommend that enough, to just like be silent. Like now when I go on walks, it is like no form of media. I am literally like dead silent, or I am in silence on my walks, and usually like talking to God and just having like quiet time to like think for myself. Sometimes in the car, which like this is new for me. I feel like I've never done this, but like sometimes in the car now, I just like don't have any music playing, which is like, I've always been that person that I always have music blasting in my car because I love like driving around listening to music. And even that, I was like, I need like quiet, like real quiet and silence and space. Like I need it in that moment where I hit that, you know, roadblock or hit that wall. That was one of the biggest things I felt like I actually really needed, that I had not been giving myself, was like solitude and silence, and to like quiet the voices and the influences that were, you know, swaying me too much, or swaying me like away from who I really am at the core. And I don't know, I had to kind of remove some of those distractions. I had to set some boundaries with people that like I hadn't really set boundaries with, and just say like, I need space. And like, I don't mean that in a rude way. I need time to literally be alone. And when I say that too, it's like, yes, I was spending time with myself and with God, but I was also really leaning on my family, like during that time, and during this sort of like personal pivot that happened for me, of just like returning to myself. My family was like biggest support ever, that like I relied on for everything. I went to Ashton all the time. She was there for me. And like my parents, like I just went back to like my family. I went back to my roots. I went back to like that safe place, and like just really relied on those figures in my life that had always been there, and really just leaned on them in that moment. So
I do feel like that is such a problem in our world today, just the constant like disconnection from yourself, because there is so much noise, and we hear that all the time, and that can sound so cliche, but like, dude, we're all being influenced often all day, every day, because of our consumption patterns and habits.
Yeah.
And that's just simply not healthy. Like, who and what are you allowing to have a voice, a say, a sway in your life and how you live? And I think that, you know, it is just so ironic, because I know you so well, and you are like the more quiet, contemplative individual, even more so than me. And the fact that you were just in noise all the time says so much about how you got to that ultimate place of just going through the motions, like truly disconnected from your spirit, from your gut.
Yeah.
It just says a lot. So I think that's a good reminder for everyone listening. Like, are you truly connected to yourself and your spirit and your being, the Lord, like your anchor, your guiding light? who and what is like having a say in your life, and is it positive, you know? Too much influence can be a really, really bad thing too, because everyone's going to have conflicting things that they're saying to you. So I'm curious too, once you went through this experience and you surrendered to this process, what were some of the things that you started doing? Again, you spoke to this a little bit already, but you started doing things again to really nourish yourself spiritually.
Definitely started going on my walks, which like I think I had already kind of started doing a little bit, but like that became a very big thing for me that I just knew I needed like to have that quiet time, which quiet time with God, like, you know, and I still do that when I go on my walks for the most part. Sometimes it's like quiet and I'm not really, thinking about much. I'm just like enjoying nature, but like most of the time when I'm on my walks, I'm like praying and like, talking to God about whatnot, and just really like nourishing that connection. Another thing I started doing again was just like, I don't know. Some of my habits kind of shifted. I feel like I started like, I started the mornings with like the word and just getting anchored there, because I had not been reading the Bible in like forever. And, that's something that I know is super important, is like nourish yourself with that. And I had not been doing that for the longest time. And I felt like instantly called back to that. And I was like, I need to just do this again. So it was like the days after this sort of crazy experience happened, I was like naturally waking up at like 5 a.m. I don't know why, but I was just like, I don't know. It was like, I felt like a new person in a sense. And I just felt renewed, I guess. And I instantly would just wake up and like start reading the Bible and having some God time in the morning. And I feel like that's so important to like start my day like that. It feels so like grounding, and I still do my walks and really just like enjoy nature. I am just like so amazed at nature all the time. And I'm just like, wow, this is beautiful. Like that makes me feel connected to God. And yeah, so I don't know. I think those would probably be the biggest things, and just overall like more like quiet time in my days, more silence to like just like exist and be and think for myself. And like I said, I used to like play music all the time, and like even in the shower I used to play music a lot, and sometimes that's still fun. Like I like listening to music and just singing, because like that's such a vibe. But I feel like even that has kind of shifted for me, and I'm like, I usually have like silent showers now, because I'm like, the more silence you can get into your days, like I'm so serious. It is like, I don't know. It's felt so refreshing for me, because I'm like, I do enjoy social media. I'm one of those people like, in some regard, I really like social media and I like playing around on there. I love the internet, but man, there's so much noise on there, and it's so nice to have that quiet time in my day. And, when I'm showering or on a walk, to just like shut off the noise and like stop scrolling and stop even like I said, I had been, maybe talking to my friends like all the time about whatever. I was like lessening the amount of time I was spending like talking about certain things, complaining and talking to certain people, and kind of just like getting back to some quiet time and some silence that has felt so that's felt so necessary for me. And moving forward, even, I'm still like carrying that with me. Like silence is golden.
Oh my God. Really. Silence? What even is silence now that I'm a mom? Yeah, but honestly, I think that's something that I can speak to. I'm sure there are other like moms listening to this, and your version of this is going to look so different. And man, if you're not a mom yet, you better be like soaking up like any quiet personal time. Like just do it, just soak it up. But, I think finding pockets of time to just like choose yourself, choose your spiritual life. Like I have choices every single morning, like whether or not I'm going to just jump into my day, use nap time to like jump into my day, or like take a few minutes to like sit in silence, pray, just pour into myself spiritually. And, it doesn't have to be a long time. It could be like 5 to 10 minutes, and you'll have to do what's realistic for your season of life. And I think there's so much more to this too, just knowing that like you can be connected and like in tune spiritually, even when, your life feels chaotic and crazy, and like, Leo's sitting next to me and I'm trying to do like my devotion, and you just do what you got to do in that season. Something else I'm feeling really called to as well is just like in the evenings, instead of like letting TV time be my unwinding and like calming down because I've just been like doing all the things all day for my baby, like doing, a little bit of that, but like also end the day with like reading or prayer or quality time with Josh, and, just implementing that in a way that's like accessible for your season of life. And I think it's important for everyone, like no matter if, you're in a season that's busy and crazy and you have a bunch of kids or not. I think a couple minutes a day is something we can all do.
Yeah.
So let's kind of sum some of this up. Any like big lessons that you learned that you just want to like pass along to our listeners? And I know you already hit on a really big one, which is just like more quiet time, more silence. I think that's a huge one. Like
genuinely, like if your days are super busy and like, I'm like try to find pockets of like silence and quiet where you can, because like it's just so important. But like another big thing that comes to mind that I have kind of touched on was like what you need sometimes outweighs what you want. Like I cannot stress that enough. Like if you feel like you've been maybe neglecting what you need because you've just been wanting to live your life a certain way, your needs are super important and they need to be met. They need to be met. Like for real. So I'm like, that was one of the biggest takeaways for me, is like, I was just neglecting what I needed for the longest time. And I hit a wall. Like I literally hit a wall with it and had to go through this sort of crazy experience. And yeah, I'm like, now I feel like I am better about like, trying to prioritize what I need in my daily life. Like I need to exercise even though I don't want to. Like there is just some days where I'm like, I'm not feeling it, but I'm like, I need to for my own sake of like my physical health, but also my mental sanity. Working out is like so helpful for me to like stay sane. And the same thing applies to like the spiritual part of you. It's like, you need to nourish that like seriously, or else like it's probably going to catch up to you at some point if you're not like nourishing that part of you. Because I feel like we're all, spiritual beings in human bodies, and yeah, it's just like so important to prioritize that and don't neglect that part of you. It's like, yeah. What else comes to mind?
I just wanted to follow that up with saying that like I do feel like our generation is so in touch with what they want, and I feel like we're taught to follow what we want all the time because that's the empowering path. Like do what you want, no matter what. Yeah. When in actuality, we're just operating like little children. It's like my kid might not want to take a nap, but he needs rest. My kid might want to have like a bowl of ice cream, but he needs carrots. Whatever it is, it's like we're just kind of running around like aimlessly following things that like we want and that are fun. Eventually that does catch up with you. Like sometimes life is going to require more than that. It's going to require more maturity, and your business too. Like it's just going to require that you follow what is necessary, what is needed, because that does sometimes outweigh what we want. So yeah, I just think that's a really good point to make.
It's true. Another thing that came to mind was like the gratitude thing. And I did kind of mention this as well, but like just something I struggled with for so long was just complaining about my circumstances or like comparing my life to someone else's, because that was so easy to do in this digital age. Like compare yourself to like someone else's life online. And I feel like the biggest thing I've been trying to do like every day is just like be grateful for like everything that I have. Like literally almost every single morning I wake up and I'm so grateful for this day. Like I'm so grateful. Like it's so genuine too. And like, so I'm like every day is a new opportunity. And, I'm so grateful for like, and sometimes another thing here I'll say is like, I've had moments recently where I was like spiraling, or I was just like really in a bad state of mind. There was one moment in particular, I think a few weeks ago or a month or two ago, where this happened. I was like really like having just a moment of like struggling. And I sat there, I would think I was like crying. I don't know why I don't even know. But I literally just started listing off out loud things that I was grateful for. Like, even if it was like broad, I was like, I'm grateful for, I literally was in my room and I was like, I'm grateful for my bed. I have a really great bed, and some people don't have a nice bed like this, and I like genuinely was just trying to like get myself out of the frame of mind I was in. And I'm not kidding. It like helped. Like, I just kept doing that. I kept saying what I was grateful for until like the other feelings I was going through like went away. And then I was like, like everything's fine. Like, gratitude is such a big thing, and like being grateful for what you have, I can't recommend that enough. The practice of just like gratitude, reminding yourself of like what you can be grateful for. It's like, it's good to set goals for yourself and cast vision for the future of where you want to be someday. But if you can't be grateful for what you have in the present, then like, man, I'm just like, that's the biggest thing I would recommend. Another thing too that I feel like I have kind of been learning lately is just like how to slow down a little bit more. And like, one big phrase that has stood out to me so much recently is like, time will pass anyway. It's like, what are you going to do with it? And what attitude are you going to have as the time passes? And like, as your days pass, it's like, am I going to like fret through my days and be anxious and be like, I need to get to work and I need to get all this stuff done? Or am I going to like slow down and like chill out and just like go with the flow? So like, that's another thing that I feel like has been a big takeaway, is just slowing down and like enjoying my life and being grateful for everything in my life.
Yeah. It's like where your focus goes, your energy flows, and you call all of that right back to you. So if you're complaining all the time, if you're, putting out negativity and frustration and anger, like all of that's just going to come back to you. You're going to attract that back into your life. And I think that so much of it is about like taking control again of like your attitude, your perspective, your energy, because we actually get to choose those things. Like, feelings are going to come up all the time. But are you going to allow your feelings to guide you, to dictate your every move? Feelings are fickle, like they aren't a true solid foundation. And so we have to find ways to choose the energy that we're going to bring that day, to choose gratitude, to keep perspective. And I feel like that's something you've learned so much in this season, that we all need that reminder. And I also think of this book that Josh recently shared with me. He read this little passage in there that said basically, anytime you hear something that on the surface sounds negative, your response should just be good. So it's like, awesome, my baby's not going down for his nap and I have to hold him. Good, I get to cuddle with him. Or our AT&T guy, he came like 8 hours earlier than he was scheduled to come. Good, we get our Wi-Fi back on sooner. Just responding to these things in our life that come up and actually choosing a positive perspective, like choosing positive energy, and knowing that not every day is going to feel exciting and positive and amazing, but at least doing your part to choose gratitude, to bring that energy that you want to bring into your days. I think that's just a really good reminder for every single one of us.
Yeah. You get to choose how you posture yourself in life. And like, I feel like you can choose like peace too. I think about like this sort of experience I went through. I feel like, I faced this head on, and then I, made the choice to like change the way I'd been living my life. And that brought peace. And I feel like it was like divine intervention on my behalf. But I do feel like now it's like, it is up to me. It's like, yes, I feel like, God helped me through that like experience, but I feel like now it is up to me, like every day, to like choose that like peaceful stance, that peaceful posture, and to just choose to be like grateful for everything in my life. Like, I get to have that choice. And yeah.
Ultimately, I feel like this is just a reminder to come back to you, to like give yourself that freedom, that permission, that space to like come back to you, to really nourish yourself, like body, mind, spirit, tune out the noise, like get regrounded and recentered with your own gut and intuition and inner voice. And that sounds so cliche. There's a reason why cliches exist. It's so important, not just for your business, but like your genuine like quality of life. And so I think that's really one of the biggest takeaways from this episode. This was so fun, just diving into your personal experience and journey and just painting more of a picture and bringing more perspective as to why we're doing this season. And it's not just because we want to sit here and preach to you. We're trying to share what we're actively walking out, living out, and feeling like our community and even our larger generation needs this message and needs this simple reminder to come back to your roots, to who you are, to what you really desire. And this episode was just a beautiful reminder to do just that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks. Love you.
Love you. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this interview style, very behind the curtain episode. We appreciate your time, and we will catch you in the next one.
Bye.